Rebiya Kadeer is the president of the World Uyghur Congress. Her organization fights to promote the right to self-determination for the Uyghur people in East Turkestan against Chinese occupation. Since 1876, the Uyghur people have staged more than 100 major uprisings to regain their lost independence. The 9/11 attacks in the US led to the prosecution of Uyghur organizations as part of anti-terrorist measures and the blacklisting of several Uyghur separatist organizations by the UN and the US. Rebiya Kadeer was arrested in 1999 and sentenced to death for leaking state secrets. Upon her release, she was discharged to the US after 6 years of imprisonment. Prior to her arrest in 1999, Kadeer had been an acclaimed entrepreneur and philanthropist in China and held various political positions in China's parliament and other political institutions. Her lecture today is entitled "The Framing of the Uyghur Independence Movement, China's War on Terror." Ms. Kadeer, the floor is yours.
Menin halkımni Xitayını besvağa vaqtida intayin ahkümül, yavaş, tinchlikparvar, şundaq yaxshi bir insonlar deb özlerining dövlətini e'lon qilgan.
So when China occupied East Turkestan, the Chinese leaders, the Chinese generals who occupied East Turkestan, they themselves described the Uyghur people as friendly, as guest-loving and peaceful people.
Hakikaten şundaq yavaş bir ahkümül xalq.
Really, Uyghurs are a peaceful people who would like to live with the others in peace and together.
Xitay hökumətininki hazırki atalğısı da menin xalqım dünya terrorizminin en köp qurbanı bolup ölüp atqan xalq.
So now the Chinese authorities describe the Uyghurs as terrorists, extremists, and now the Uyghurs are the victims of the war on terror.
Çünkü bizning xalq musulmon xalqi bo'lganligi uchun Uyghur bo'lish sifati bilan yana musulmon bo'lg'ashqa Xitoy hukumatı dunyoni aldashda bu dunyo terrorizmni bizga birlashtirib to'liq iste'mol qildi.
So Chinese government of course has been using the war on terror as a pretext to further crack down on Uyghurs, and it was easy for them to label the Uyghurs as terrorists, the Uyghur organization as terrorist organization, because Uyghurs happen to be Muslims.
Endi Uyghur xalqının muşmağına oxşaş modern, hiç qandaq qılıqıdak radikal emas, şundaq bir normal musulmon.
So Uyghurs actually moderate Muslims, and they of course they are very peaceful, and you can also the Uyghur women are equal with the man, and you can consider this as, by looking at me. So I am a model of the Uyghur woman.
Biz dünyadaki her qandaq zoravallıqqa qarşı.
So we are against all kinds of the violence, all kinds of the terrorism.
Bu terrorizm degan atalgı bilen biz özümüz hazırki minutlarda tinchlikqa eng bir muhtaç millet.
So we need peace. We don't need any violence.
Bugün biz mişagimiz şunu izdep geldik.
So we are here to looking for that. We are looking for peace, looking for living together with the other nations.
Şunun için ben halkımның derdini sizlerge hasırtını tökkülü geldim. Benim yardımcım yarım saat bizden beşimizden ötken tarihini okup berdi. Səvir qilib anlaşılığını ümit qilman.
So I came here to explain what's happening in my land, what our people are suffering, what is the suffering of the Uyghur people. So I have prepared a rather longer statement, which my assistant, Omar Kanat, that's me, will read to you. So I instructed him to read my statement, all my statement.
Yarım saat vaxtınlarını alım.
So it will take maybe half an hour. Please be patient. I'm a Uyghur, a Turkic Muslim from Central Asia. I came from a place we Uyghurs called East Turkestan. which the Chinese government calls the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Xinjiang in the Chinese language means new frontier or new territory, an inaccurate description of the land on which the Uyghur people have lived for hundreds of years. The present population of Uyghurs is about 20 million. East Turkestan was occupied by Communist China in October 1949, 1 year before it occupied Tibet. In 1955, the Chinese government designated East Turkestan an autonomous region, renaming it the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, in promise that it will respect the cultural, economic, political, and religious rights of the Uyghur people in East Turkestan. Under these terms, the Chinese government also promised to respect the Uyghurs' right of self-determination as well. However, the Chinese government never kept its promises, and like Tibet, there is no sign of autonomy in East Turkestan. This year, China will enter its 65th year under the rule of Chinese Communist Party. The path of economic development in the People's Republic of China since the beginning of reform era in the late 1970s has earned the Chinese government the admiration of many observers. However, in the rush to praise modern China, a history of political repression, in a present-day policy of minority persecution have been obscured, if not totally ignored. The Uyghur people of East Turkestan have long been victims of Chinese Communist authoritarian rule. In the years since the CCP gained control of East Turkestan in 1949, Uyghurs have been subjected to a number of destructive campaigns and movements. From the purge of East Turkestan nationalists in the anti-rightist campaign of the late 50s, to the starvation, exile, and destruction of the Great Leap Forward, and the Cultural Revolution, tens of thousands of Uyghurs, along with millions of other victims, were persecuted by the Chinese government. Beyond the aforementioned campaigns, Uyghurs were also subjected to special campaigns specifically directed at them so as to dilute their distinct identity. In early 60s, the CCP administration instigated a forced resettlement policy with the aim of dispersing concentrations of the Uyghurs and isolating them from their communities. In 1961, my family fell victim to this policy. We were forced to leave our homeland and to relocate far from our friends and our relatives. There was also a simultaneous campaign to move millions of Han Chinese from China proper to East Turkestan. Documenting the history of Uyghur persecution by the Chinese authorities is a long and difficult undertaking, full of personal stories that have been lost due to the silencing of Uyghur dissents throughout the years. It is therefore important to focus on the present and to speak about the current repression and abuses facing the Uyghur people so that these accounts are not lost to the world forever. The Chinese government has dramatically increased its repression in East Turkestan since the devastating September 11 terrorist attacks. Unfortunately, the Chinese government has used the international war on terror as a pretext to crack down further on the Uyghur people. It was easy to China to label Uyghurs as terrorists because Uyghurs happen to be Muslims. The Chinese government has launched numerous strike-hard campaigns on the Uyghurs, has arrested and detained thousands of peaceful Uyghur activists, and has executed hundreds of dissidents and religious figures, accusing them as terrorists and separatists. In 2001, the Chinese authorities launched a wholesale attack on Uyghur culture, language, religion, and national identity, and began implementing open assimilation policies that it couldn't dare to implement in the past. In 2004, the Chinese authorities banned the Uyghur language as language of instruction in colleges and universities in East Turkestan, and gradually expanded this policy to primary and secondary and middle schools as well. An official policy of recruits young Uyghur women from majority Uyghur areas of East Turkestan to be transferred to work in factories in urban areas of East China. Under this policy, thousands of Uyghur women have been removed from their homes, sent away from their families, and placed into substandard housing and working conditions thousands of miles away. Already, hundreds of thousands of young Uyghur women have been transferred from East Turkestan to Beijing, Tianjin, Jiangsu, Qingdao, Shandong, and Zhejiang, and other locations in China proper. There were 240,000 Uyghur women transferred from the Kashgar region to China's eastern provinces in 2006 alone. The eventual goal of this policy, as part of 11th five-year plan of the Chinese government, is to transfer some 400,000 young Uyghur women to China's eastern provinces. The mass in-migration of Han Chinese settlers and the out-migration of young Uyghur women to East China has dramatically changed the demographies of East Turkestan. Today, Uyghurs are an absolute minority in their own land. The population of Urumqi, once an overwhelming Uyghur city, is now 90% Han Chinese. This economic and demographic degeneration is accompanied by grave cultural and human rights abuses. In East Turkestan, China is actively promoting the sinification of Uyghurs, whereby linguistic and religious aspects of Uyghur culture are outlawed, banned, or otherwise discouraged. In order to dilute and destroy the Uyghur culture and tradition, the Chinese authorities have implemented a resident resettlement project, relocating 65,000 Uyghur households from Kashgar's old city, and has subsequently demolished the old city of Kashgar. In rural areas, the Chinese government has forced Uyghur farmers off their land with a paltry 5,000 to 10,000 yuan in compensation. This land was then given to Chinese settlers. As Kashgar Old City is one of the few remaining centers of traditional Uyghur culture and religion, many Uyghurs consider protection of Old City as vital to maintaining a separate Uyghur identity. Kashgar's Old City contains over 8 square kilometers of traditional Uyghur homes, bazaars, and centers of worship, such as 600 years old Eidgah Mosque, a relic of Uyghur culture, religion, and identity. These repressive policies have led to a series of bloody incidents in East Turkestan. In the wake of the unrest that rocked the regional capital of Urumqi in July 2009, Chinese authorities have implemented a multi-faceted crackdown on the Uyghur people. Reports from East Turkestan indicate widespread extrajudicial killings of Uyghurs by Chinese security forces, mass arrests, enforced disappearances, arbitrary detentions, and torture. According to Chinese government sources, 197 people were killed and 1,700 people were injured during the July 5, 2009 unrest. But according to Uyghurs, more than 1,000 Uyghurs have been killed and hundreds of Uyghurs have been disappeared. The Chinese authorities' indiscriminate killing of Uyghur protesters is consistent with the systematic political, economic, social, and cultural human rights abuses from a government obsessed with the maintenance of its control of a strategic and resource-rich area. The upsurge in extrajudicial killings of Uyghur, influx of special security forces, shoot and kill policy, and widespread heavy-handed repression in recent years has turned East Turkestan into a war zone. Since June 18 of this year, 237 people have been killed and hundreds of Uyghurs have been arrested, while since March of last year, the Society for Threatened People has cited the death toll at 495, with 526 injured. Within the same period, 976 people were arrested for political reasons, and 38 Uyghurs have been executed for political reasons without due process. In addition to this, there are numerous cases of forced disappearances, which has increasingly become a standard operating procedure of security forces. Most of these incidents have been reported by the official sources as terrorist attacks organized by Uyghur groups. However, after most of these incidents, it has been revealed that the incidents took place either as a result of harsh reaction of security forces to peaceful protests by local people, or because of the police raids on civilian houses, suspected of practicing illegal religious activity, so-called illegal religious activity, which in accordance with the laws and regulation in the region could include communal praying and basic religious education. In fact, it's instructive to recognize that suspected terrorists may indeed include those with no propensity towards violence, but those that simply wish to peacefully demonstrate and have their voices heard. The last mass killing of Uyghur civilians by Chinese security forces was carried out on July 28, 2014 in Ilishku township of Yarkand County of Kashgar. On the evening of July 28, a group of Uyghur women at 15, 16, and 17 district of Ilishku township of Yarkand County gathered to spend the night together to celebrate the end of Ramadan and arrival of Eid. The group consisted of two parties. One was of 30 women, the other of 15. Men were absent as they left for evening prayer. The information about the upcoming communal prayer was revealed to Chinese police by one collaborator. Acting on this, a fully armed special Chinese police unit invaded the household, shooting some of them and arresting the rest. According to another eyewitness report, the uprising began after the killing of a Uyghur family of 5, including a 7-year-old child and a 70-year-old grandfather, over a dispute by Chinese police about wearing traditional headscarves in a neighboring village of Ilishku. This Chinese police brutality triggered the popular protest in Yarkand County. News about Chinese police brutality and the killing and beating of praying Uyghur women spread quickly to the Ilishku township in neighboring Nochi, Huangdi, and Dongbag villages. A group of Uyghurs marched to the police station and government offices to seek justice for the killing of innocent villagers. As usual, Chinese security forces regarded this mass gathering as a crime, something that should be silenced, and started to shoot at them without listening to their concern. Some Uyghurs armed with sticks attacked government vehicles and government employees in protest against the violence by security forces. Chinese police shot and killed many of the protesters and arrested the rest. The Chinese authorities deployed military units and went on to kill others during a house-to-house search. In the wake of the incident, Chinese officials implemented a shutdown of both the internet and instant messaging services in Yarkand County. Although the incident happened on Monday, July 28, Chinese state media did not report on it until the following day. A Uyghur netizen who shared details of the incident online had been subsequently detained. In the absence of independent reporting and transparency, we don't know exactly how many Uyghurs were killed by the Chinese security forces on July 28. But according to confirmed reports from the region and eyewitness accounts, at least 2,000 people have been killed during the Chinese security operation in Yarkand County following the Yarkand popular uprising. Chinese authorities launched a mass arrest campaign in the region and the rest of East Turkestan following the unrest in Yarkand, and has imposed further restrictions on the Uyghur cultural and religious rights. Some cities in East Turkestan began to endorse an openly racist and discriminatory policy aimed at ordinary Uyghur citizens. A new development is in the Chinese military's use of drones during the operation in Yarkand. A People's Daily online article dated August 17, 2014 discusses how security forces deployed surveillance drones in Yarkand County during the anti-terror operation. According to the article, drones were used in Ilishku, in Huangdi townships, and searched for alleged terror suspects.
Excuse me, could I ask you to start wrapping up? 2 more minutes?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. According to the article, operations were conducted day and night. Based on the reports, we have reason to suspect the usage of weaponized drones against the Uyghur civilians in the recent Yarkand massacre. It is a particularly troubling fact, taking into consideration that in all likelihood, the drones were implemented to test the ammunition and capabilities of Chinese military equipment. The use of the armed drones in the area is especially shocking, considering the density of the affected Uyghur villages, such as Ilishku Township and Yarkand County. As history will tell us, the ensuing governmental repression of the Uyghur people creates a vicious cycle. Contrary to the Chinese government's propaganda, stability of China's entire country is compromised by the failed ethnic policies in East Turkestan. Uyghurs' resistance toward China is linked to the continued repression. The recent track record of the Chinese authorities in the region indicates a possible escalation of similar forms of the use of force by security forces with impunity against the Uyghur civilians. The lack of accountability on the part of local and central government and security forces are paving the way for more arbitrary detentions and extrajudicial killings of Uyghur civilians. Already the number of incidents of mass arrests, forced disappearances, unlawful executions reported in the last year reached an unprecedented level, a level that needs to be addressed internationally. In the absence of a strong international pressure against the Chinese authorities, East Turkestan may witness an increasing number of massacres and mass killings of the Uyghurs by Chinese security forces. Thank you. We were not able to read 1.5 pages. Unfortunately. Let me say.
Şiir yazganlarımı terörist hazır. Kitap yazganlarımı terörist dedim.
So now, all the Uyghurs are accused by the Chinese authorities or suspected by the Chinese authorities as terrorists. Even the people who write an article, even the people who write a poem, poet is a terrorist.